Hello and welcome back to the second part of Chapter 1. So we're going to continue on with the history of SMM, and just a little background for you is that, as of 2015, like 73% of the adults in the US have a profile on a social media network. If we look at a timeline for social media starting in 2004, you can see that we have these types of social media sites that have come about. 2006 is when Twitter started, Tumblr, um, and so on, Facebook, and I'm trying to look at the rest of these, and you can see just the size of everything that we're getting. And so there are just all kinds of different social media sites out there, social media apps that we're using, and it's exploding. And so if you're not taking advantage of it, your competitors are, and they're putting you at a disadvantage. So even though you may not want to be using social media, you need to do it in order to just stay competitive. Otherwise, you put yourself at a disadvantage. Now, when we go back and look at the history of social media, we actually are looking at the history of the internet. And so the internet came about using ARPANET back in the 60s, and they finally connected up universities to use this network so they could send files back and forth. And then we have some other types of networks that are still alive today in their use. One is called Usenet, and you can go on there and subscribe to different types of groups that are on Usenet, and in there people post information and content that you can use and see. I remember when the internet went to the consumers out of the university setting, that Usenet was probably one of the first things people learned how to use, because you could get big pictures on there. And so you could download different files, and you'd have to have another program that would put everything together, and then eventually from all those files you would see the picture of whatever you were using. Some other different media sites you can see here. Some of them are still around, but they're maybe out of favor with the consumer. Specifically, something like MySpace, which is before Facebook. You have Second Life, which I remember 4 or 5 years ago, people were thinking they were going to use that in academia to simulate different environments, and people would take on a character and play certain things, and that just hasn't seemed to take off. But you never know, something like it may take off, and then you would want to make use of that. I can remember, just a year ago, Pokemon was probably very, very popular. Did people make use of that, trying to put advertising and attract consumers from them using Pokemon? I don't know, but they probably should have tried. Some other social media sites, as you can see here, we've got Pinterest, which wasn't listed on the other one. We've got Instagram, how people are doing photos now. I think the latest thing I saw with Instagram is that they are trying to use some kind of positioning so that depending on where you do your picture or take your picture, it will also record your location and transmit that out as well. And so there were some privacy concerns with that. And so you also need to be thinking about, if you develop your own app, how does that impact the privacy of your consumer? The next thing we want to talk about is, why is SMM different from traditional marketing? And so there's a couple of different things. One is, in traditional marketing, you had control of what went out, what people saw, and so on. Versus currently with social media, what you're wanting is that viral effect. And so now you don't have as much control in terms of the consumer could post something about your site or put a picture up or some other kind of media about your brand that you wouldn't necessarily have control over. If it gets resent out or retweeted or linked to, then you have even less control because now you didn't get to it in time in order to take it off the internet. So then it won't be there. And so with SMM, you're trying to build that relationship. And then part of that relationship is a trust. And so you need to be earnest. You need to be as honest as possible. If you do anything that violates that trust, violates that honesty, then those consumers are likely to come after you and you will destroy your brand. And so you don't want to do anything that's going to try to manipulate the consumers to get them to do something that they don't want to do, but you've manipulated them somehow or not been as down to earth about it. So again, it's something you want to be very, very careful about because it takes a long time to build up that trust, and it takes something very minute, small to just destroy everything that you've built for that relationship. So you can think of SMM as some kind of combination of knowing about marketing and the creativity that goes with that, and then how to use the technology that goes with that. So that technology that I've been talking about is all the apps that are out there, the different types of social media. And then what is it that you're trying to do? What are your goals? And that's something else we'll be talking about for the rest of the book. So the next thing I want to talk about are some different careers that you might find. So if you look back to the beginning of social media, somewhere around 2003, there was very few people that were using it. Now we've got billions of people that are using it. So because all those people are using it, we have a demand for someone to be doing social media in our organization. And if you'll remember from the previous video, I showed you what social media that Western is using for our students. And so if you want that social media to work, you're going to have someone monitor that. Somebody's going to need to respond to what the consumer is posting, to respond to either questions, or if they're saying something good, you want to get that going, see if you can turn it into something viral. And so it's going to require somebody that has some kind of social media background, understands marketing. And so where do those people come from? So those people come from different parts of the organization that have an interest in using that technology, have an interest in that type of marketing. So many of the positions then that you might see include the following. So it might be somebody who has a blog that writes about a certain topic. Maybe somebody has an education blog, and they write about a mention of Western, so that's something that somebody needs to monitor, whether it's positive or negative information that's being put out there. Maybe it's a community manager, somebody that's managing a certain aspect or a location of say a city or something. They might also have digital media manager, might be part of an organization. Somebody might have the title of director of social media marketing. They might be an engagement manager and they're using social media to do that. Interactive media, and so on. And so there are all kinds of different positions that might be available in an organization. They may not even say social media marketing, but these are the sort of things that they're going to have to use those skills and that technology, those apps of social media, in order to fulfill these types of jobs. So if you're not that person who wants to take that social media position, then you have to be someone that's going to hire somebody for that. So what do you look for for someone who has the right kind of skills to be good for social media marketing? One is they're going to have good communication skills, and what we mean by that is they're able to engage a diverse group. people that are different ages, different ethnicities, so on. They have to be able to read and understand what the consumer is saying, so then they're going to have to be a good listener. They're also going to have good writing skills, especially when they're responding to complaints or negative information that the consumer has put out there. They're going to have to understand how computers and the internet works, how the technology works with that computer and the internet. They should have some knowledge of search marketing, so that would be Google Analytics or some kind of search engine optimization. And they need to be good at least 3 different types of social platforms. So examples might be Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So they're going to be looking at each of those different sites and monitoring them and putting content out there and so on. I know when we look inside the College of Business, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, and so information or content is coming out about the college daily. And so somebody has to be able to put that out there, monitor, and see if it's having the effect that they thought it was going to have. If you'll remember, we talked about ROI earlier, that return on investment. So how much money, capital, time are you putting into it from your business? Is it worth it? Could the money be spent somewhere else? And so as a business person, you need to monitor that and make sure that it's giving you a positive ROI. So hopefully I've got you sort of engaged and sort of interested in this topic, and so you may want to look and see if you can find a job in this area, or you want to stay involved in this area. And so if you plan on doing that, you need to stay on top of what the trends are. There may be a new app that's coming or a new feature for an app that's going to propel that app ahead of Twitter and Facebook or LinkedIn. You need to be someone who can act quickly. That is, you're monitoring those different social media sites, and if you see something that's either positive or negative, you can respond. You need to be somewhat comfortable with analytics. Some of the social media sites have good analytics built in. So if you're looking at Facebook and Twitter, they can give you some information about who's doing your likes, who's looking at your pages, what is the demographic makeup of those people in terms of age, location, so on. If you get a little deeper into the analytics, you may want to look at Google Analytics, where you're actually pulling information from a website into Google Analytics, and you can then find out even more information about your users, the type of computers they're using, what kind of browser they're using, and so on. And then design your media for the type of technology your consumers are using. And then, we talked about be a good writer earlier, and so it's not only a writer in general, but a writer for social media. So if you're using Twitter, you need to be succinct and get your 140 so characters out there and say exactly what you mean, and try and get that to go viral and get likes and get lots of people looking at that. So along with that, then you would be showing how you're an effective user of social media. If I was hiring somebody, I'd want to know that they've done some social media, and they'd have to show me how they had started off in a low response rate and then got that to be a high response rate, or got something that would go viral. And there are plenty of companies out there that if you're good at this, they'll pay you even while you're going to school to do social media marketing for them. So our last slide here is what are some best practices currently for social media marketing. So we want to begin with a strategy of what you're doing with your social media and what you hope to achieve with that. So have a plan. We talked about you need to be honest, be transparent in all the things that you're doing on social media. You don't ever want to get caught in a lie or get caught looking like you're trying to manipulate the situation for your own gain. You need to think about who it is that you want to go after, your target audience, so to speak, and how that particular target audience will use a certain type of social media. So depending on, let's say, if you're looking at age group, what's the preferred social media for that age group? Or if it's a certain group of college students who use technology, well, maybe they're using the latest and greatest type of social media app that's not even popular, but that's who you're going after. So you're going to have to learn how to use that app as well. Right? Be open to participation and feedback from your target market or target audience. Understand that not everything's going to be positive. You're going to have some negative comments. You have to learn how to deal with the negative comments or the negative media that might come about based on the brand that you're trying to put forth. And just know that things are constantly changing, and so you need to keep up with that technology and how people are using it. It may be that they're using it in such a way that it was never intended to be that way, but now they're using it that way. So you're going to have to learn how to use it that way also in order to interact with your target audience. And so that ends this chapter. And so going forward, in the next chapter, we'll talk about setting your goals and strategies for your SMM. And that ends this chapter.